Hi guys, it is October 3rd, still driving. This is video number 10. We have covered a lot, and I'll repeat the same things that I'm sure everybody's getting sick of hearing me say, but I always like to have the disclaimers just in case somebody pops in and watches videos out of order or doesn't really know what they're seeing. Lisa, who is driving at the moment, she and her family and a few of her friends have been interested in learning about, studying, investigating paranormal activity over the years. I have varying thoughts on my own of the paranormal. I'm open-minded to learn, and literally that's how these conversations started. And as we talked, the two of us, more and more about it on our long drives here and there, we realized that maybe it would be an interesting video. Maybe it would be something cool to share. The comment section in the videos, as far as I know at the recording right now, is still open. If you watching have thoughts or comments or questions or things to share, this is an imprecise science. I do not consider it a science per se. I consider it a fringe science, maybe. Science is a fact-based study. The paranormal, as you might know watching this, is less on fact and more on experience, which cannot be discounted. It shouldn't be discounted. There are things in my mind, which is why I am now interested about learning, that cannot be 100% defined or clarified. We don't know everything. We can't prove everything. Humans are still very young on this world, and the more we learn and the more technology enables us to learn, then through time it could turn into fact. So and now we're in a tunnel. So that said, up until this point, we had been sort of introducing Lisa's ideas, her opinions on the things that people call ghosts, because I myself needed clarity around that. That there, in her opinion, are things that people will say or see, visions of things that are almost like snapshots in time being replayed over and over, imprints of energy. They're not necessarily ghosts. They're not necessarily things that will even ever interact with you. They're the farmer walking across the field or the soldier walking into the woods. Something disrupted the energy in that spot and imprinted almost like a movie reel. So that was an interesting conversation. Then there's also the past human ghosts, which is what I'm going to be referring to them as. Those that are the Aunt Mabels and the Grandpa Freds that have passed on, that have deceased. Their body is no longer here, but their soul, spirit, ghost is not ready to move from this worldly realm. They have some sort of communication they want to pass on, but the communication with them, the contact with them, is most likely a lot less than people believe because of the amount of energy it takes to communicate. And we as humans, our spirit souls, it is the opinion of Lisa and those studying with her, don't have these great stores of energy to communicate with us. So it does happen, but not as often. And then we discussed poltergeists and the energy things that some people these days are calling shadow people. And we discussed that over the years that name has shifted a little bit because it's based on what's a catchphrase for the here and now. Shadow people, slim man, shadow man, shade, that these things, whether it be what we call a poltergeist or a shadow figure or Some might call them demons and not refer to any kind of religious twist. They just don't know what else to call them. That those were never past humans. They were never humans. They were something else. We can't explain where they came from or why they came to be, but they are here, and
manifestations of energy.
Manifestations of energy. So all of our past videos have circled around that. I have found it fascinating, but that leads back to why someone who finds themselves investigating or simply sitting at home studying every piece of literature and now internet documentary, why just why? I am an adult. I am established in my life, and I don't ponder these things as much. I don't study them. I am interested in them. I will watch a documentary or read a book in passing, but it's not something that's really become part of my life. And then you have people that have literally turned it into a profession. They have gone to formal schooling for what it's worth, wherever they find, because it's not mainstream. They have created their own career in the study of. And then you have people that are the most common people in my mind that have their day-to-day life. They get up, they go to work, they do their thing, but in their pastime, they have become so intrigued and so fascinated that they go out and investigate and learn. And sometimes they do it on their own, sometimes they do it in a team. But at least for this video, and most likely the next, I would like to pick the brain of this person that is very close to me. And we live a daily life together, but she ponders the things that I don't ponder. So, that being said, my first question is, how long have you been interested? How long have you been investigating, either physically going out and investigating or just studying these things?
A long time. Basically been interested in it my whole life.
How old are you?
54. About to be 55.
Okay.
So at least I would say I've known about it and have been intrigued by it since I had somewhat of an understanding of what it was. So I'd say 10, 11, 9, 10, 11.
So your age, but not years. So
Yeah.
Since you were 10, 11 years old, you started to become more and more interested.
Right.
Okay.
And that was due to the fact that my mom, may she rest in peace, was very open to it.
So it was a familiar thing.
It was a very familiar thing. It was something that was talked about in our family. And she would talk about things, and if we questioned it, she would go further into explaining it, so we had a loosely based understanding of it. So I was kind of brought up, which is weird, in a very strict
Religious.
I was raised strict by a Catholic mother. Not to say that we were raised in a strict Catholic family. So it wasn't like church was our priority. Make sure you go for the holidays and this and that. You do the Catholic things you're supposed to do, communion, all that stuff. But we weren't, as we got older, weren't every Sunday you need to be in church family.
Okay.
But it was believed. But we were raised open-mindedly to the fact of the paranormal more so on the... Back then, it was less paranormal and more occult.
Okay.
Okay?
Because anything that's unknown to strict religious guidelines would be...
So you're figuring back in the mid to late 60s, early 70s, 80s, it was the occult. And then as it got into the 90s and 2000s, the occult kind of went away and paranormal became
the catchphrase.
The new norm. Yeah. Right. So, back then, it was very big conversations, strangely enough, around the dinner table, or the table, about the occult. My mother was raised very strict Catholic family by my grandmother, who became a widow when my mother was 10. So back in the era of the 30s and 40s, so a single woman raising 7 children on her own, that was something that was, weird. So, but she did it. But my mother's family has roots very deeply. So my mother was told about. When she was born with this thing they call a qual. And then come to find out, some of us in my family, my siblings, a few of us have it as well. We're born with it as well. What a qual is an attachment of flesh that looks like a veil over a baby's face. So, it's kind of attached to the neck, and it comes up, and then they just kind of snip it off, kind of like a circumcision of your face, I guess.
It's like a thick piece of the sac or placenta or something that is adheres to them. Yeah.
But back then,
they had no idea what it was.
They had no idea what it is, but in the belief of the occult, if you were born with that, you were then deemed a witch. So thankfully, she wasn't born in their burner at the stake. But they believed that these people then had powers of the occult, and they could do spells and this and that and whatever. So talking about this, and then coming to find out that I had been born with one apparently, and my one or two sisters had.
So it's almost like an old wives' tale that was a part of biology that people didn't understand, but it led to the belief that
the open-mindedness of this is possible.
This is possible.
So, like I said, throughout my life growing up, I would hear these stories of things, and then as I got older, I was able to start questioning them on my own. To my mother, like, well, what did you do when? And how did that happen? And what is this and what is that? Things like that. And she was very open with us, and she would talk to us about it, tell us the dangers of it, and the uniqueness of it, and whatever. So that opened my mind up to it. So as I got older, I was like totally fascinated with it. To the point of, I would go hang out at graveyards, things like that. When you're a kid, you don't necessarily know about haunted locations.
Yeah, so you're trying to piece it together.
You try to piece it together, and you're, well, okay, I want to see dead people. Where do you go? A graveyard. Hang out at a graveyard at midnight. Whatever. Hope to see somebody come up out of the grave. Things like that.
But because of, it was almost like a series of circumstances, because of the religious upbringing. So already you have, unlike somebody that was raised in a non-religious, non-spiritual, so you already had a religious upbringing that opened your mind to even just spirituality,
right?
Which in my mind is actually step one, because there are so many people raised in completely secular households, and they have no interest in any type of otherworldly anything, because it's just never been a conversation. So being raised in a spiritual household, but then also being born into an era of the old wives' tales and the leaning to your own understanding that already opened the door to you might be something else, so let's discuss it.
Right.
Open and freely, you know, and I think a lot of that, like anything else, like I like to refer to, you know, a baby that's raised in a bilingual home doesn't realize it's speaking two languages. Well, someone that's raised in a way that's very openly discussing what could be and what might be, you already have your foot in the door for what you believe.
Right.
Yeah.
So then as I got older, I kind of drifted away from it for a while because I had dabbled in various things and kind of got scared and backed off of it, because looking back now, my fear wasn't fear of the unknown. It was a fear of I wasn't experienced enough to handle this. You know, I knew better then to go further into it because I didn't know how to get back out of it. You know, so things happened, had some of my own experiences.
Which we'll talk about later.
And I backed off of it. So in my, I would say, mid-20s, I started getting into, I forgot what it used to be termed as. It was a big thing. Urban something or another. I can't remember what it was, but basically you went into abandoning old buildings and checked them out. And it wasn't like ghost hunting. It was more or less like going in my aspect, was going in and looking at the architectural things of these buildings. And then, you know, for the beauty of the buildings themselves, and a lot of them that I went into without permission, you know, obviously it was trespassing because these buildings were closed and deemed unsafe for people to dwell in them or be in them. You know, I would go into these things, and as I got more and more into it, I started taking equipment with me. Video cameras, recorders, flashlights, things like that. And then I found, while going into, you know, I had a few that were favorites. Some of them no longer are standing. They've been knocked down, and the area has been used for other things. You know, but I've been in abandoned sanitariums, abandoned mental hospitals, asylums, abandoned prisons, things like that. And by myself, with nobody else, you know. And
but initially you went in just to
check it out.
Just to kind of explore.
Just to explore it. Like I said, for me it was more of the agricultural, architectural aspect of it, you know. And then I realized, you know, one day when I was in one of these buildings, I was sitting there just taking in the view from, and it was an old insane asylum. And it was like this really cool, I was kind of dabbling in photography at the time as well. And there was this window that was barred and whatnot, but it had a lot of stuff, moss and vines grown over it from it not being used for so many years. But it was a very small room, like a cell. And I didn't know what parts of that building were what, because I wasn't in there with someone that needed the building.
Right.
You know,
you're just wandering around.
I was just wandering around.
You're trespassing. This was years, you know, statute of limitation, everyone watching, you know, she doesn't trespass anymore.
No, I usually get permission to enter buildings. So I had taken a picture of the view from inside out that window because it was very artistic, it was very beautiful in my opinion. And then I sat there and I started pondering it of like, what was this room used as? You know, was this a holding cell? Was this a solitary confinement type area? Because it was very confined, very small room, very small window, you know, that only gave you a very small view of the outside world.
All right, hold on. We are at a very good cliffhanging endpoint, but we are up to 20 minutes. So we will pick up immediately after this, but due to downloading and those watching and editing, I am trying my hardest to keep this to 15 to 20 minutes of video. So I am on a little edge of my seat. I want to know the next part. So I will end this here and we will pick right back up. All right.